Hey, what's going on? So yesterday I had a great opportunity to go speak to a group of retired special operations folks. These are through all branches of the military, and they've been operators at the highest level. And the reason I bring that up is because what we were talking about was how to take care of your body. And a lot of them had been at these levels for more than 10 years. So these are not just your average, Joe Schmo weekend warrior kind of guys. These are people who have pushed their bodies to absolute limits. And the bulk of our conversation was spent on recovery and how to make them not hurt so badly, because a lot of them accrue and accumulate a ton of injuries over the course of their career, and things are never feeling 100%. So what do you do? How do you help them feel better? Was basically the conversation. So I'll kind of run through what the big takeaway points are. All right, so it's hard to train hard. All right, I mean, people show up to the gym, but to actually train hard and do that routinely over and over again is very, very hard. Because a lot of people like the idea of the results that training hard can bring, but then when you lay it out there about like, hey, here's what you've got to do, all right, well, suddenly there's not so many people showing up anymore. And the results they thought they were after, that they wanted, they don't want to put in the work and all that stuff. But anyway, it's hard to train hard, but it's even harder to do all of the unsexy stuff in terms of recovery. All right, so when I say recovery, I'm talking about everything from psychologically recovering from a stressful bout to doing the right things from a nutritional standpoint, to hydrating properly, stretching, foam rolling, whatever recovery modality you want to insert there, whether it's tempering or cupping or whatever, it doesn't really matter, because it's more important for what works for the individual. So it is very difficult to do that stuff because it's not exciting, and sometimes the recovery modalities, if you're working with a physical therapist or if you're doing tempering or whatever, sometimes that can be more painful than the actual training itself. I was scraping a guy's leg last week, and he's a tough dude, and he's done a lot of hard training, but the scraping session that he was going through, he's broke out in a cold sweat, grabbing onto the table and cursing over and over again. I mean, this is not fun stuff, but he knows what works for him, and he knows it's going to set him up for another successful week. So that was point number one. Point number two is thinking about this concept of points. So this was the first time I read about the point system was from Anatoly Bondarchuk and Vladimir Shirin, where these guys were talking about you have three types of training sessions. All right, so you have either a restoration session, a retention session, or a development session. And then you have a certain degree of recovery associated with those sessions, anywhere from 12 upwards of north of 72 hours. And that's based on the session RPE or the load size of the session. Everything from small up to extreme. And then the points are assigned, if it's a restoration, it would be a 1, a retention a 2, and the development would be a 3, 4, or a 5. So with those types of sessions, you want to think of it like this. Anytime you go into the gym to do a session, at least for that bout, you are in a negative point balance, all right? So here's what I mean. If I give someone a budget of 20 points and I say, all right, well, within a 7-day period, don't go over 20 points. And I also assign you may not have 2 subsequent 5-point days. All right, so right off the bat, after 7 days, especially with tactical population, it's likely that they've used all 20 points. So now they are in a potentially 20-point deficit. So now the question is, those are short-term negative points, if you will. But how do we recover some of that negative point balance? All right, so how we recover it is by doing things like low intensity steady state cardio. It's good for general health purposes. It's good for helping the body heal up. It's good for a lot of reasons, right? But we could also cup, we could scrape, we could do a sauna session, we could do a cold plunge. Those would be positive points, if you will. Okay, so everything you do in a formalized training environment is going to be knocking some of those points down in a short-term negative set. So when we're talking about this and we're scribbling it all up on the board just to make it make sense, the other point that doesn't get talked about enough is that the type of work that people do, especially these folks, is very stressful, no question. So they're probably in the hole right off the bat before we even can talk about the formalized training. Oh, what if they're sleep deprived? Well, now they're definitely in the hole. What if their nutrition's not, what if they're not getting enough nutrition? Yeah, continuing to go down the hole, right? So what if their relationships are strained or stressful due to, the nature of their work? Yeah, stressful. So we just have to account for these things, and we have to figure a way to help people, number one, bring it to their attention, but number two, how do they recover some of this fatigue and recover some of this stress so that they're even set up and ready to go for a training session? Because a lot of people love to talk about the sets and reps and periodization, blah, 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 and whatever, man, that shit's cool, but if your folks have a ton of that stuff going on, they're beat up, I promise you they don't care about any of that. They just want you to help them move better and feel better. So those were the 2 big points we talked about. The third point was just, well, how do we just help people feel better? And how do we help people relax? So this is where we started to talk about sympathetic and parasympathetic states. Because especially with this population, where they have high sympathetic drive a lot of the time, and they're probably never taught how to get into a parasympathetic state other than regulating their breathing or attempting to regulate their breathing. So with that, we probably don't need to do more sympathetic work. We probably need to do some more work to facilitate some parasympathetic drive so that they can recover and heal, and that will cause certain areas to relax. That will allow movement to be restored. That will help them sleep better. So now we're gaining back positive points so we can, make our way back to baseline of true zero. Hopefully we can do enough work to end with a surplus so that now we have a positive adaptation. So anyway, those were the big things, but notice what I did not talk about. Nobody in the room raised their hand and asked how to max out their bench or their squat. Nobody cared. Everybody was interested in, how do I feel better? Check it out at dynamichp.net. Have a good day.